Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the IAIB Spotlight. I'm Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by someone that I've gotten to know over the last couple of months. We talk on a regular basis. We discuss technology. We discuss setting up a studio for video production. We talk about editing, a lot of internet broadcasting stuff I discuss with this guy. And we're joined by Mike Myers. How you doing, Mike?
All right, how you doing?
Mike Myers has a website called tech-zen.tv where he discusses everything from new media technology to church technology to just tech talk in general, security, everything that has to do with tech, right?
Yep, pretty much. I mean, we try to focus on all different sides from the programming to the new Mac user is one of our shows. So yeah, we go from one end to the other.
Now, you are not the serial killer or the comedian, right?
I have been told I'm not that funny, so I don't think so.
maybe the serial killer then.
Well, I hope not that either, but you know.
I was asking, we had started doing the show, but we had to re-record. But I was asking Mike if he gets any traffic because of his name. Do people come to you, try to contact you because you have the stand-up's, name?
Well, I don't know if it's the reason I'm getting traffic now, but it used to be when I had a blog that did have a picture on it. And all it said was Mike Myers at ME at the top, and I got a lot of fan mails through that site.
Oh, that's hysterical. That's amazing. I would imagine.
Yeah, it does.
Is it? Do you still get it like to your website if people Google search you? Like, do you ever?
I do get Google search for Mike Myers, yeah, but that's not a lot of the traffic anymore. At one time, it was a while back I was getting a lot of traffic for Mike Myers. I assuming looking for the comedian, and probably not the serial killer probably, but. Now I don't get much. I don't know. It's the way of fan mail. I used to be able to hit the button and say, send a comment in, and I'd get all kinds of weird things from people. But I've added my picture to the blog now, and that seems like it deterred it.
Oh, that's not the guy.
Yeah, that's not the guy.
I guess you get a lot of that. I want to talk to you about your setup first, Mike, because I love the brick look. When we were redoing the studio, that was actually the concept that we wanted to do was have, obviously I'm not going to go and layer brick all across this room, but I always loved the exposed brick look. Tell me about how you set that up. Tell me about your setup. Just go into detail about building it out because I always love to hear the stories behind, the build out of the studio. And I absolutely love the setup that you have.
Well, this room that I'm in started out as being an audio studio. I do recording for bands and things like that. And the room's soundproof. There's foam everywhere. Of course, a foam background looks, to me, not so good unless you got some kind of weird design to it in the basic foam. But so I decided I looked around and liked other people's setups, and I kind of like the brick look. So I went looking around, and I think I got it from Lowe's. Basically, it's paneling, the old-fashioned 70s paneling done in a brick look. And I put some boards on the back with some hinges, and I can take the whole back apart in a couple of minutes and take it out of the room if I ever need to put a band back in here again.
So you actually break everything down, and then you just reassemble it.
I can do that. I don't do it on a regular basis unless I'm bringing somebody in as far as the band goes. And in fact, last time I brought a guitar player in, he went direct, so I didn't really take it down for that at all.
But when you do take everything down and reassemble it, are there, as far as the equipment itself goes, are you moving those things around, or are you leaving everything where they are?
For the most part, I'll leave it where it is. Most of the equipment's actually here in front of me in this front corner. The snake and everything that comes in for the audio. The only thing that's really attached to that back are those TVs and the power and the feed to the TV. So it doesn't take very long to take the TVs off, and then they just slide off, and then take the background down.
So it's not flat on the wall. There's a separation.
There is, yeah. There's foam behind it before they get to the wall even.
Oh, that's interesting. And what kind of paneling is that? What did you...
It's just regular. I mean, it's from Lowe's. It's like reminds me of in the 70s the paneling everybody had in their basement.
Yeah,
but it has a brick look to it versus the wood paneling look.
It's actually really cool. I really do like it. So I want to talk to you about how you got into internet broadcasting. Were you a fan of radio growing up? Were you into technology and that kind of set you this way? How did you get into this?
Well, yeah, growing up, I actually worked at a radio station when I was pretty young. Being the new guy, I always got the night shift, and I hated it. So I didn't, and it's boring to me sitting there just playing music all night long. So I didn't do it for very long.
What kind of station was it?
It was a mix station, so it was like the 80s, pop stuff, Michael Jackson, things like that.
Oh, okay, at least it was something fun.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I like the music. I just got tired of just sitting there waiting for the record to end and things like that. So it didn't really interest me to do it as a full-time job. I looked at that as possibly being the case. There wasn't much talking, nobody interact with. There's nobody around in the middle of the night, so you're just playing the records. But I was in the technology since I've been really young. I've been a developer since before I could even drive to my first job. My parents had to drive me for the first month to my first programming job that I had. So I've been in the technology, since I was young. That's like in the mid '80s, and ever since then, I've been somehow going forward. In the early '90s, I got into music for bands, learned how to mix bands. Started doing every week mixing a band in '95. So I've been doing that since '95 every week, and I was doing this for a church. Eventually, the church grew. They brought in a guy who I consider a real good friend of mine, who is like born with this information in his head. And I learned about a lot more audio. And then he went into video, which is where I got involved in video. And in about the mid 2000s, probably 2004, 2005, I started learning video production. And I've been doing it since then. And I love doing the video production. So the next step was getting into the broadcasting, which in December of last year, it's when I first started doing my first broadcast. And it was a real learning experience because, I knew video production, I knew audio production. I just never took it to the step of actually broadcasting it. And that's where the IAIB is full of that kind of knowledge. And that's kind of where I found and started reading about things and learning. Because I'd never actually streamed anything live before. I didn't know what that even was. I've done podcasts, but I never did anything live. And that's where I started getting interested in it. And plus, I have some hobbies like the Arduinos and things like that people were asking about. So I started doing the first show I did was Let's Make It show, because I couldn't find shows that were meeting exactly what I needed. So that's why Let's Make It was created. And all the shows I do have been inspired by something. So I'll give you an example, and my mom will hate me saying this, but I convinced my mom to go to a Mac from a PC. Her laptop died. And I said, well, let's go get a Mac. It'll last longer. You'll be a lot easier to use. You don't have to call me all the time about the problems. But she had to convert from Windows to a Mac. So I created the Mac Minute show basically for people converting from a PC to a Mac. And now we go through other things as well. But that was the inspiration behind that whole show, was teaching people how to convert from a PC to a Mac.
And are you learning things as you're doing it? Like I always, whenever we're talking about technology and whenever we're doing the show, like I like to put my personal experiences with, what we're talking about. And I'm learning as I'm going along. Were these things that, that you knew, or were you looking it up because of your mom?
Well, for the Mac stuff, I pretty much knew it. This is more to help her and people like her that were stuck. But for the Let's Make It show, I'm constantly learning. That's what I love to do. I'll get sensors I've never used before, and then I'll do a show on how the sensor works after I figure it out. So it's more teaching people what I'm learning for that particular show. The Mac Minute was, again, focused toward people who didn't know it. Things that I'm always learning about the Mac too. I don't know the Mac inside and out, but I'm pretty good with it. And that's pretty much, I use one every day. I develop software on it and been using them, for a long time. So instead of going and sitting with different people and teaching them, I'd rather put it into something that people can watch and find on the internet, which is what Mac Minute started for.
So how do you, I'm looking here, you have 2, 4, 6, 8 shows. What's your schedule like? How do you prep for these? How do you, kind of separate the time? Because obviously you have a day job and obviously you work. How do you separate this? Because it's a lot going on. It's not just 1 or 2 shows a week that you're doing.
Right. And the show that's the hardest is Let's Make It. 'Cause I have to learn what I'm going to talk about and write code and assemble electronics. That one takes quite a few hours of prep time. Mac Minute and Security 101 are actually what I call bulk recorded. So I'll get a bunch of subjects together, write all the notes up, and I'll go in on the green screen with the teleprompter in front of me, and I'll go through all those shows and do 15, 20 at a time and render them out. And then my outsourcer puts them in the list to be released at certain dates. And so I spend like a day on each of those for 2 months at a time. The weekly shows, it depends on which show it is. The church technology show, I'm kind of ahead with that one right now. So I know what I'm talking about for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and I have the notes all ready to go. And that was one of those things where I kind of sat down and sketched out what direction I wanted to head with it ahead of time. And I'm the only one doing the show, so I don't have to do any prep with a guest. Now I'm trying to get some guests in, but I haven't done that yet. Let's Make It, I also have a co-host that does some stuff on his side. So we typically do 2 segments. I do one and he does one. So we both take the time ahead to prepare for that. So it's time consuming, yes. Because so many of our shows are bulk recorded, though, it makes it a little bit easier. Because it's not like I know certain shows I release on Wednesdays and Thursdays, but they've been recorded, a month ago. So I don't have to worry about prepping for Wednesday and Thursday.
One of the videos that I checked out a couple weeks, I believe it was like a week ago that you posted, or 2 weeks ago, was the digital soundboard setup for the church.
Uh-huh.
And it was fascinating to see how, first of all, the lighting on the stage, and then you have this like real production setup to do this. I mean, tell me what kind of equipment you're using, because it is impressive looking. I think you're using 2 of those Behringer digital boards, right?
Yeah, at the church, we're using 2 Behringer X32s for front of house. For monitors, we're actually using 401Vs that are linked together, and the 401Vs are for their in-ears, so they have their own MIDI control over their own ears through that. But yeah, so we do a full band. We run 2 X32s, and we've got like 2 spare channels out of those 2 boards, so we're pretty full.
Wow, so you're using like 60 channels, 62
Yes.
channels of,
Yep.
That's unbelievable. How do you like those boards? Because I know a lot of people are interested. They released them recently, a couple months ago, and I don't know. I think you're the only one that I know that's actually using it.
Oh, I love them. I mean, I actually have one here. I used to do everything through Firewire for recording the bands, and the X32 through one Firewire cable can record up to 64 different instruments. So like when you saw me at the church there, I recorded that in a whole band on an old Mac G5 using one Firewire cable, every channel individually.
Wow.
So, and that's what I use out here now. So instead of going out and expanding my Firewire, I went and bought an X32, and I can record 32 Firewire channels at one time. So they're awesome boards. I have never had a problem with them yet.
For people tuning in, we're talking to Mike Myers, a friend of mine from tech-zen.tv. He's going down, pretty much we're talking about everything. We're talking about his setup. We're talking about how he got into broadcasting. He told us that he was a disc jockey at a radio station, and he hated just sitting there overnights. How long, I know you said you were doing some production stuff for bands. Tell me the difference between doing, internet broadcasting, a talk format like this, and to do production for a band. I think at the end, the core is still the same, but they're still different. Audio for music and audio for voice are 2 totally separate things.
Well, yeah, if you're comparing audio between the 2, they're completely separate. Actually, I found it a little more difficult getting into the audio for broadcast. Using these different mics, they're a whole different setup as far as bands go. In a band, you got to worry about turning the gain way down because it's so loud. Where on these mics, they're so quiet, you got to turn the gain way up. Also, broadcast, you typically do things. If you like the sound of the mic, like this mic I'm using right now is flat. I'm not doing anything to it. A little bit of compression, but very little bit of compression. When you get to a band, you have the exact opposite. You want to notch out certain frequencies for the vocals to punch through. So it's a whole different way of thinking when you get a band up there. So you may notch out a little part of the guitars because your lead vocalist is in that same area. So you got to notch that out so they can punch through it, so they're not walking on top of each other. It's just a whole different way of thinking. It's very interesting, though. It was a good challenge to learn the differences between it.
I would imagine it's interesting for you because do you now your shows you're recording a lot of them ahead of time. Are you doing them live, or are you recording them live, or are you just airing them live?
We record them live. Everything we do is recorded live.
But you said you actually take that and you edit it down, obviously.
Well, we do for the bulk record ones, but for like the Let's Make It ones and the church technology, they are pretty much record to tape. I don't make any changes to them.
And tell me about your production. How do you edit? Walk me through the editing process.
So, what we do, and I say it's record to tape. We don't edit the content, but we don't play the intros and outros live. So we've pretty much done. I've been using Wirecast recently. I was recording it all to a Blackmagic Hyperdeck. And I still do record it for backup, but haven't been using it recently. It's just there in case something would happen to Wirecast. But when I'm done with the shows, I go over to my other Mac, my editing Mac. I copy the files down from the Wirecast machine, open up Adobe Premiere, create a new timeline in there, and basically copy in the intros, drag over or do the ins and outs on the file, put over the ends, and submit it. Now the submission process for us is pretty automated. When I render it out to what Adobe calls a listen directory. And when it's done rendering, the encoder for Adobe sees that, and then it re-encodes it in high def, standard definition audio, and then uploads it to my FTP server, which then also automatically uploads it to my YouTube. And then my outsourcer sees that and goes and releases it.
That's actually a pretty simple setup.
Yes.
It's not overly complicated. I mean, I always like to ask people, and some people have these crazy process where they record at a, uncompressed format, and they compress it, then they edit it, and they upload it. But, I mean, it's pretty easy. And what kind of camera are you using? Are you using a Logitech, or are you using something else?
No, we use, they're Sony's. I don't remember what the model number is. They're kind of the prosumer level.
Okay.
I'm only using a Logitech because I'm with you on Skype, and I have an issue with getting Skype to go high def out of my Mac. That's the only reason.
So when you're doing it live, you're using Wirecast also, right?
Yeah, so that's something that's new. The way we used to do it with the HyperDeck, which was a lot more work, is I take the HyperDeck, which is uncompressed video, take it over to the Mac, take a half hour to copy it off the drive, and then I would have to add lower thirds into it because I wasn't doing lower thirds live.
Inside of the HyperDeck, you were putting the lower thirds.
No, I wanted in the editing process afterwards.
Okay.
Because the HyperDeck records straight from the cameras, right from an ATEM. There's no lower thirds in there at all. The Wirecast method has been saving me a lot of time because the lower thirds I do live during the show, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. It saves probably an hour a show.
So right now, are you also using the ATEM currently in your process?
Yes. Yeah. So what happens is the ATEM has the inputs to it from all the physical cameras. And then the cameras are all SDI into the ATEM. It comes out of the ATEM, goes into Wirecast, where I then apply lower thirds to it. And I used to do the intros and outros in there, but it was confusing my guest or my other host, because they couldn't hear it or couldn't see it, because they're seeing what they see back is the ATEM screen. So I see back your live stream to me, but what they see is they see all the cameras. And if I would go to play something on the DVR and Wirecast, they couldn't see what was going on, and they were getting confused by it.
Okay. I'm fascinated by the ATEM because I know a lot of people that use them, but you're using both Wirecast and the ATEM. So you're switching on the ATEM.
For the most part, yeah. So what I've been doing a little bit recently is I've been using Desktop Presenter and doing the laptop stuff on Wirecast. So as you know, we have the Korg. Everybody uses the Korg. I modified a Korg script that would do both so I can use it. And now I have my own physical switcher that I can actually control everything with. And I'll go, basically I have one input that comes from the ATEM. One input is our Desktop Presenter. And recently, the last time I did it, I also had another physical input from my Skype One machine, because my regular co-host on the Let's Make It show, I want to do double boxes. So I can bring him he's still in the ATEM as well, as he comes into the machine directly through a Blackmagic card.
So I want to get back to your setup, but I know you're very active in the community of internet broadcasters. That's how I pretty much got to know you. You also, I should mention, you also co-host Broadcast Now, which is on the Tech Buzz. You co-host a show with Stephen Haywood, which I've been on a number of times. How did you get active in the community? How did you start linking up with everybody? Because, I mean, it's almost like I always felt that you were always around. Like, I've always seen your name around in the community.
Well, that's because you're thinking of Neil Mike Myers.
Yeah, that's the one. I forgot.
Yeah. I mean, no, I found the IAIB when I was trying to get answers about streaming, and I can't remember what I searched for, but I found something that linked to the IAIB, and then I realized that it was a free thing to sign up for, and I signed up for it. And for a while, I was trolling around trying to read all the stuff, and then I started participating, and it's through this I've become more active because I'm learning more, and my nature, I like to help people. That's why I do the shows for teaching people. I wouldn't be a good teacher for kids, but I like to show people how to do things. So I think that's probably why I'm so active in it.
And you're always around. Whenever I need a question answered or someone needs something, I could always message you and ask you. And I think that's the great thing about this. The community aspect of internet broadcasting has really helped a lot of people and elevated a lot of shows. I wouldn't have the setup that I have right now if it wasn't for the community. And even outside of the IIB, I mean, people like you and Mike Phillips, and there's so many people in the community that always are willing to help out. I think it's great that it could improve all of our setups. When it comes to you and live broadcasting, I know a lot of your stuff is intended for post production stuff, and you're putting it on YouTube, you're putting it on your website. Are you looking to venture more into the live stuff, or are you comfortable with, airing it afterwards?
Well, I think it'll always be aired afterwards, but I liked the live stuff. I think it makes me a better broadcaster because I'm more interactive. And the Let's Make It show, we have a pretty nice chat room when we do that show, and I like that interaction with people, and people can ask questions and give comments, and I really like that live interaction. I don't like as much when I don't have somebody to interact with. I think I'm sitting here or standing here with the green screen, and I do Mac Minutes, and I feel like it's really programmed, where I feel more natural if I'm interacting with people.
I've always had the same issue, and I was talking to someone the other day about this. I can't remember who it was for the life of me, but we were talking about pre-recorded material versus live content, and they were telling me how they don't feel comfortable when it's live because they feel like there's more room to kind of mess it up. And I feel the total opposite. I like it live because if I mess it up, I could kind of, go back on my thought and kind of it's almost like you're retraining yourself to, even when you do mess up, it doesn't look that obvious. And you can't be like, okay, let's start over. Okay, I can't do this right now. With pre-recorded stuff, I'm awful. I cannot get a thought out.
Yeah, and I like the mess up parts because, especially with show you're trying to teach people, if something doesn't go right, you need to show them how to make it go right, or what you did to fix it, or what what your mistake was.
Yeah, you're breaking down the thought process, really.
Yeah, I don't cut anything out like that. I leave it all in there. I mean, what you get is what really happened.
Let's talk about, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but let's talk about your community around your show and how that's changed. You said you like the interaction, but do you feel that it helps you while you're doing the show because you see the people interacting and talking about it? Do you gauge the topic, the interest in the topic based on the chat room? How does it work for you?
Well, what typically happens with our chat room is that they ask questions or have comments about what we're doing. Like if we're demonstrating something that we're trying to do, they'll ask, what if you did this? Or how did you do this? And then we can answer those questions, live. We also get a lot of emails afterwards, and I will call out their name and everything during the show saying, thank you for the email, and here's your answer. So we do a little bit of a response segment with that for questions that we get, which actually I think has brought people into the chat room because they now realize that we'll talk with them live, which is why the chat room is actually growing.
How about social media? How do you handle that for the shows?
Well, unfortunately, that's probably one of my weak points. I just forget about it. It's not that I don't want to do it. It just, I'll start a show and never tweet it out. And, it's one of those, I need to have a checklist that I go through before I start a show saying, did you tweet this out? Because I'm just bad about remembering it. I don't mind doing it. It's just that I just don't do it.
You also do something interesting on YouTube, and I wanted to ask you about this. You have individual channels for the shows, right?
I did. I don't anymore.
You did. Tell me why. Why did you do it, and why don't you do it anymore? Because I don't see too many people doing that. I know it's time consuming, and you have to upload it to individual channels. You have to remember which channel. But why did you do it, and why don't you do it?
So I don't look at it as being any more time consuming because I had it automated. It didn't make any difference for me time wise, and I have somebody else going out and putting the comments in and releasing it. So from my point of view, it wasn't any more time consuming. What I did it helps other shows get found. So what I've noticed since I did this is shows that weren't being watched very much are now being watched more. It's like people didn't realize, it helps them realize there's other shows they can watch from our channel or our network.
Yeah, because that's an argument that I constantly hear from people, and it's, do we post everything on one channel or do we post it on their own individual pages? And since YouTube is free, it doesn't hurt to do it, to try it the other way. As far as an RSS goes for your podcast, do you have an individual feed for each show, or are you just doing one mega channel?
Each show has multiple, actually. So each show has a high def, a standard def, and an audio only feed that we send out. And we don't have one big channel. In fact, it's been a while since I asked you a question about it, and you said that you wouldn't recommend it, and that you gave your reasons for it. It totally made sense to me because I know you have one, or at least you have one end with everything in it, and one maybe individual too. I don't know.
Yeah. So what we do, we have for GFQ, we have 1 mega for audio and video, and then we have the individual ones for them. But we're planning on killing the mega channels because it actually hurts the numbers on the individuals.
Right, and I understand that, and that totally makes sense. But from a user point of view, a listener point of view, I like it being on one channel because I can just say I subscribe to GFQ and I get everything.
Yeah.
So I do like that, and I mean I haven't done that because your recommendation. So we do individual feeds right now for everything.
How are you hosting the video? Because that's like the magic question, right? Audio. Everybody knows what you could do with audio, and it's not that difficult to do the audio hosting. But when it comes to video, it's still very expensive to do, unless you're using something like YouTube or Blip. How are you hosting the video?
I have a dedicated server that I host it on.
Are you doing everything on your own?
Yeah, I do it all on my own because
wow.
I couldn't find anything that was reasonably priced. Dedicated server is $79 a month. It was like that was a no-brainer for me for the amount of video that I'm hosting. It's a lot of video.
It's still not there, right? I mean, when it comes to hosting the video, even streaming audio is still very expensive, which I find funny.
Yeah, I've recently started streaming audio, and there's a couple of different companies out there that do it. There was a good post in the IAIB about it, and I actually went to the company that was suggested, and they're like $16 a month, and I think it's like 100 concurrent users maybe, which is more than what I ever get. So that's not a bad price for that, but I think it's becoming more reasonable. It's taking time to get to there. I mean, there's still bandwidth involved in streaming audio too.
But I mean, it's a fraction of what it is to stream, a high def, video that's 2 gigs, in size. I mean, it's crazy. What are some challenges that you faced over the last, couple of years of doing this? What are you still battling as far as an issue that you need to hurdle? Yeah, I guess that makes some sense. See, this is why we don't edit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had a couple of battles, and I still think I'm fighting some of these battles. I went from a physical switcher, which is what I knew. I mean, my background is in live video production, so I knew what an ATEM was. I knew what the physical switcher was. But to get it into the internet, you have to go through some kind of software. Well, with my environment that I come from with video switching, we use pretty high-end devices after the ATEM to do lower thirds and everything. So I've come to that's why my whole thing with Wirecast was I wanted to do nice lower thirds. So I'm still battling that workflow to get from video to physical video like ATEM into streaming both audio and video. Now I'm getting there, and a lot of the help out of friends in the community are helping me get there. But I still struggle with it because I don't know if I know the right way to do it. And I had this question from somebody else recently. What would you have done differently? Well, I would have done things completely differently now that I know how it all works.
Okay, so what would you have done? That's a really good question. Would you have maybe not got an ATEM? Would you have not recorded on a different device? How would you have kind of in this fantasy world? What would have been the perfect setup for you from the beginning?
I would think of a software-based switcher probably would have been my first choice. That or going like a TriCaster. I mean, I've put enough money into it. I could have bought a TriCaster by now.
I think that's the story for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I mean the TriCaster is an amazing device, but I could have started out with a PC, a nice heavy PC that would have card inputs, and not done anything with an ATEM or a HyperDeck recorder.
Could you see yourself going to a software-based switcher right now, or are you just very comfortable with the hardware-based solution from Blackmagic that you're using?
Well, right now I'm comfortable with the Blackmagic. I mean, all my cameras are SDI, so I need something with SDI. If I would go anywhere, I would probably ultimately go to a TriCaster.
Where do you see this going with internet broadcasting? I like to ask this every time we have a guest on, and we got a different answer every time. Right now I consider this the Wild West. It's still the very early days of podcasting and internet broadcasting. Who knows if the term podcasting will still be around in a couple years? Where do you see this headed? Do you think people like yourself and me are going to be able to kind of survive in this forefront of new media, or will the big companies kind of take over and saturate the market with their content?
Well, I mean, I think we're just in the very beginning of this. I think it's not going to go away. As people look at Netflix, they do so much now with streaming video. People are getting used to streaming their content. And here we are already streaming content, and we can put our stuff on devices like Roku, hopefully soon Apple TV. I mean, you can do things with podcasts with Apple TV, but you can't stream live. But I think as they become more comfortable with this, live streaming or podcasting, whichever way you want to look at it, is going to grow because people are just getting used to doing it that way now.
I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and somebody described podcasting as public access. There'll always be a place for the amateur in internet broadcasting because that place exists on television with public access. I don't think that's the case, and the reason why I say that is because we are able to achieve something that's far better than public access is ever able to do. And I don't think people view it in the same sense. I don't think people watch your show or my show or any of our viewer shows that are doing this and say, "Wow, you know what? This is like public access." I think they watch it because it's content that they're interested in, much like television and radio. But if the big guys start coming along and kind of saturating the market, do we become like a public access? Does the fact that we're not using a high-end facility to create our content change the way people perceive podcasting?
No, I don't think so. And first of all, let me say I've seen plenty of public access, and the podcasts I've seen, most of them are way better than public access. So I don't want to compare it to public access necessarily because I think we do a better job than public access, at least where I've lived. At least.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I thought it was a total misrepresentation of what podcasting and internet broadcasting is. But this guy was trying to say like, hey, listen, even though like there's NBC and then there's your public access channel, yeah, NBC will be the big podcast, but you'll always have a place. And I didn't think that was a fair comparison at all.
No, I don't think so either because I mean NBC is going to put out their big shows and they're going to want to pay the kind of bucks to advertise as they do right now. They're not going to want to lose that money. So I don't see them coming in and really competing at the same level as what we're doing. I mean, they're already out there. You can already watch NBC or CBS on your iPad and stream it and stuff like that. So I don't see it making any difference.
I think especially in this format where we have a microphone in front of us and we're talking heads, I don't think it's the NBCs we need to be worried about.
I would agree. It isn't the NBCs. That doesn't worry me at all. I just think this is going to grow because you can't really go and watch your TV channel or your public access on your iPad at the beach. You can't watch it on the airplane. Our stuff you can download and watch whenever you want to. You can listen to it driving to work. You can watch it on the plane going somewhere. It doesn't matter. We're available all the time.
When it comes to iTunes and when it comes to things like that, do you think they're still going to be the kings at this, or are people starting to realize how to discover content? Because content discovery is very difficult, especially in what we do. You're doing video, and it's other than YouTube, there really isn't a place to go and find video. Discover new video, especially in this format. I mean, we have Daily Motion and there's Blip, but really people go to YouTube to discover video. For audio, it's YouTube pretty much. How do you see the future of podcasting working with content discovery?
Well, that's definitely something that needs to be improved upon. I mean, iTunes is the big gorilla in the room. There are other ones, like Dogcatcher has their own. And I do some Android, and sometimes I'll go try to find a podcast, and I can't find it on Android. But if I go to iTunes, it's there. So I think there needs to be some education around how to publish and distribute your podcast and your video and your audio streams.
I always feel that, whenever I try to just tell someone to go and find my show, I always feel like it's like a mission for them. Okay, how do I listen to your show, Andrew? Okay, you got to get Stitcher. You got to get this app. Okay, you got to get in the car. You got to log into Stitcher. You have to find my channel. Now you got to go via Bluetooth to your car, and hopefully your connection will stay.
Yeah, now some of these manufacturers of cars are starting to add in streaming stuff. I know Stitcher's one of them. They've been putting in cars, but they could put in Spotify or whatever the streaming service they want to use. If they do that interface correctly, I think it'll make it easier for the car listeners. But I think eventually people get used to doing that. They'll start figuring out how to do it on the devices. So far, I think that Apple is really the only one that's done a great job at integrating podcasts. I think there's other ones that are close, but like Android doesn't have a standard podcasting app. You got to tell somebody, go get Dogcatcher or whatever you want to get. You just can't say, oh, just go to your podcast app and search for me.
How do you what do you plan on changing over the next couple of years with what you're doing? Where do you want to be in a couple of years with Tech Zen?
Well, I want to grow the network some. I wanted to grow it that are non-tech shows. So we were actually renaming or starting another network called Alexa.tv, where we're going to basically let TechZen be the content creator, but Alexa be the distributor of it, more like a traditional NBC type network. And I want to put in shows in that aren't technical because I want to expand it to outside the technical realm. Unfortunately, I'm not. Some of the stuff I want to do, I'm not interested in. So I'm in the challenge now of trying to find a host or a co-host, either one, for different shows that I have no desire to be interested in or to be a host on. I want to be able to produce it. So we're in that stage now. I want to start bringing in some more shows, more live, more talking head type shows instead of the training shows. I still want to do training shows, but I want to expand it beyond that.
And that was the topic on the IAIB forum on how do you find people to do shows that you want to add. And I have the same problem with, a couple shows that I want to do. How are you finding people? What are you actively going around looking for people? Are you posting on Craigslist? What kind of shows do you want to add, and how are you finding these people to do them?
Well, I have two shows I want to do that are sports related, and I'm not a sports person. In my family, my wife is a sports person. If it's football or college basketball, that's what we're watching, but it's because of her, not me. So
it's the reverse in most homes.
That's right. If I want to do a show about sports, I'm the wrong person to be doing it. So I had some friends who said they were going to do it, and they know it, but they weren't reliable. They wouldn't show up when they said they were going to show up. So it got to the point where I had the idea, I really liked the idea, and I wanted to go forward with it. So to answer your question, that was my post on the IAB, I believe. I think I started that one because I don't really know where to go. Now, we got some good answers out of that. One of them was go to the industry forum, but I don't know, is there any industry forum for college basketball? Or is there any industry forum for, things like that? So I'm still searching for that. I've asked the question about Craigslist. I'm a little afraid of doing that because you're not sure what you're going to get. I'd rather have somebody that I knew for sure had some knowledge about it. So I'm still in search. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean,
where I'm going to find somebody.
I would look at finding someone that is currently doing it and seeing if they want to come on board.
And I'm doing that as well. So yeah, I'm looking around at different podcasts now for the subjects that I'm interested in. And maybe they're only doing audio, and I could bring them to video. I would remote switch to video for them or something.
Are you planning on keeping everybody in the same location, or are you going to be able to do remote shows? Would you be willing to do that?
I can do remote shows. I can do up to 3 remote people right now at one time.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Where do you find these people to do everything? I think for GFQ, we've in this bizarre little world I live in. People around me are really into this stuff, and these are people that I've known for the last 15 years. I get asked all the time, how do you get them to sign a contract? Do all these people sign contracts with you? How do you make sure that they're going to show up? What if they wanted to leave? And I mean, almost everybody that I'm doing a show with that comes in studio, I have a personal relationship with, and it was a couple of buddies just having a beer and like, hey, you want to do a comic book podcast? Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll do that. That's how it happened for me. But I think for a lot of people, it's a very difficult thing to find trustworthy people that will show up every single week, because it is a lot to ask from somebody for a very small, incentive.
Right. And that's what you said about there. It's kind of what happened with Security Decoded is the 3 of us all work together, and nobody's always just asking these questions about the security, what's going on. We should just do a show so we can just tell everybody, just go here. And that's kind of how I got started with Security Decoded. 3 of us sitting around talking about it. We should talk about that on a show. And that's how it came about.
I think when it's organic like that, they work out really well. This is interesting because you're kind of in the same boat as me, and it's rare for me to find someone that's actually actively looking for someone to do shows. We have had a number of people approach us that want to do a show, and I am really big on the first time I meet you, what kind of vibe do I get from you, and what I feel towards you. I don't know what it is. I have to have a connection with someone in order to bring them on, and I've had a lot of people come on board, and they've done a show for a couple of weeks. I've given them a 4-week trial, and I knew not to do it from the beginning. And it just never ended. It didn't end well. They either stopped showing up, or they thought, it was going to be something totally different. I mean, things like that happen. I always say stick with your gut feeling on this.
Right. And that's kind of what happened with the people that wanted to do the fantasy football podcast. Was they were all gung ho, and then all of a sudden they just, we'll produce it, we'll go to the content, and then they just stopped. So I'm like, okay, well, I like the concept of it, but I don't think I can trust you to be here every week and rely on you.
I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
You got to show up actually to do a show.
Yep.
Let's talk about the chat room. What kind of are you using an IRC chat room for what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm using IRC. I wasn't at first. I was using a web-based chat room that would like refresh every couple seconds, but that just was it was problems. I mean, it just didn't work well. So, getting to know Steve and he set up the webcast online. I went to the IRC at that point, and I like it a lot better. I like IRC a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, we have it on our website. We're looking for a different chat room right now. We're actively searching for something, but I think we're going to end up sticking with IRC. To kind of wrap everything up, I do want to ask you about the state of internet broadcasting. We spoke about content discovery. We spoke about everything, but what shows are you listening to right now, and what are you doing to find shows? I mean, are you active in listening? Because I feel like at times I'm actively searching for new podcasts, and then I stick to them for a couple months, and then I'll go over to another couple shows. So what are you listening to right now, and what do you think of the state of it? Do you think it's going to be podcasting that takes off, or do you think it's going to be internet broadcasting? These talking heads. Is this going to be the future of this?
So a couple questions there.
I just threw them all at you at the same time.
Yeah. So what I'm listening to right now, I move around quite a bit. I do most of the large technical networks, like some of Twit's. I listen to almost all your stuff. The Vergecast, things like that. But I also do some non-technical things. Like I've been recently, I have bees in my backyard, so I'm listening to podcasts about bees. So I move around, and sometimes a subject will just hit me, and I'll just go out and search for it. Hey, there's a podcast for this, and I'll start listening to it. I will say it's a little scary of how bad some of them really are. I don't think a lot of people take a lot of pride in what they're putting out there, and it may just be they don't know any better. Since I've had some really, things that you can't listen to. You got to stop because it's that bad.
I actually think it's in certain categories, like in the tech category. I think there's a lot of great podcasts out there. In the sports category, there's a lot of great podcasts out there, and then you start, getting into health, for example. And I'm sure there are plenty of health-based podcasts, better living-based podcasts that sound phenomenal. But I have heard atrocious stuff, and I think the less technical you get, the more of a hard time you have finding a show that sounds great. I was listening to a pro wrestling podcast yesterday, and the show has a tremendous viewership, and I'm not talking about Brian Alvarez, so he was on last week, but it was I found him on YouTube. I was listening to it. I know they have a following, and it was awful. It was one of the worst produced things I've heard, but people are listening to it.
Yeah, we always joke about audio is not important, but it really is. If you don't have good audio, you can't listen to it. It just drives you nuts. Because so many times I'll download a video podcast, and I will be playing it off here to my right and listening to it, but I won't ever watch it. So audio is very important.
But I wonder if it's important to us for the mainstream. The majority of shows do not have really good audio. And really in 2013, there's no excuse why you should not have good audio, because you could go and buy a microphone for $32, the ATR 2100. You could buy it for $30 something and have really, really stellar, high quality audio. I'm amazed at the fact that that's not the case.
Yeah, and I will admit that I'm probably overly sensitive to that, because being involved in sound so long, little things just drive me nuts. Even if I go to a concert and I'm sitting somewhere that's just a little thing that drives me nuts, it bothers me. So I may be overly sensitive to that. But I do agree that the less technical, the farther away you get, the worse that it sounds. I believe the one podcast I listened to, they were probably actually using the microphone on the laptop to record it.
Yeah, and I bet they have a pretty decent following also.
Yep, probably do.
I almost want to, when I'm listening to a show, like I almost want to email them and tell them, there's a problem. Like I know a lot of people do shows on Blog Talk Radio, and I think that they're a great service for their call-in system. But as far as releasing a podcast that was recorded on Blog Talk Radio, I don't think that's passable at this point.
No, their audio quality for the podcasting is pretty bad. For the phone calls, they're a great service for that. And phone calls are low bandwidth anyways. They never sound good. So for what you use it for calls, it's fine. But to do a whole show on there, I can't imagine.
Mike Myers is our guest today. Tech-zen.tv is the website. You can follow Mike on Twitter. You can follow him on Facebook. He has a fan page. Everything's listed on the website there. He also has a YouTube page. And before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about putting your stuff on YouTube versus putting it on your website. I see some of your videos have 20, 30, 40,000 views on YouTube alone. What's the magic there? If you were to give a tip to somebody that is doing this and they're looking to get more discovered on YouTube, what's a tip on getting numbers like that? Is it just constant content, or is it specific topics that you've noticed that really catch on?
It's very specific topics is what it is. Because I'll have some in 1 week I'll get, a 4,000 or 5,000 views, and next week I'll get 12,000 views, and next week I'll get 1,000 views. It really is topic dependent. I don't know if it's the keyword search terms I'm putting in there or exactly what it is. Now, the other thing that we do is on our website, we embed the YouTube views as well. So some of those views also include people that watched it on our website.
But do you think it's topical? I mean, things that you're releasing.
Oh, definitely.
Like, give me an example of something that's done really well and it's very niche.
Well, if you look back through some of the security decoded stuff, we had a couple of articles when certain things were coming out in the security industry, certain malware was coming out that we got tons of hits on, and just because it was everywhere in the news, people were searching for it. And when you search things in Google, YouTube comes up there as a video. I had how we found that or got lucky that way.
Yeah, I'm looking right now on YouTube, like the Mac Minutes, which those should do really well because they're short, they're quick. They're not 1 hour long, and you're talking about like power saving tech settings, 25,000 views. You have a time lapse of a camera controller, that's 37,000 views. These are technical things that people are looking for, but is it strategic as far as the time that you release these things? Is it happening that people are finding, or are these people that have been actively searching for an answer and they just happen to find you?
That has to be what it is, because we don't put it out any particular time. We put it out as soon as we get it edited. It's typically out, sometime Tuesday or in between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. So we don't particularly target them, and when we tweet them out, that's kind of automatic for us. But I don't really know other than the keywords or the topic of the subject that we got found like that.
It's amazing, actually. I mean, it's pretty impressive on how someone could take something and just build it out to the extent that they're getting 37,000 people. I mean, in the long, we become so obsessed with numbers and we're like, yeah, it's 37,000, but like that's 37,000 people that have clicked on this and watched it. That's astonishing.
Yeah, I'm really cautious about those numbers too, because I don't know if somebody's using for something different. I mean, we've had some shows that we're all excited because we got so many views within the first 3 weeks, and then the next show that we did never reached 1,000. So it's like one of those things where you can't live for the numbers. I don't look at that. I look at my download numbers when I do YouTube numbers. I trust my download numbers much more than I do my YouTube numbers.
I think it's amazing. We're running out of time, but Mike, I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. We had a lot to talk about today. Obviously, I threw a lot of questions at you. You're someone that's creating content on a daily basis. You're doing video, you're doing audio. You are the epitome of the term internet broadcasting, because not only do you do a talking head microphone show, you also do a green screen style show. So you're covering all bases of internet broadcasting. Yeah,
the green screen stuff is kind of fun. I'm not using it probably to its full extent, even for the couple of shows I'm using it for. I like to do more with the green screen, actually. Maybe another show in the future.
I've never used a green screen, and every year I say, well, this is going to be the year that we use a green screen, and I just totally chicken out of it. I'm terrified to do it, Mike. Maybe you could help me set it up.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe that's what we're going to have to do. Guys, we got to wrap it up, but if you miss any portion of the show, you can go to our website, ibroadcastnetwork.org. We're going to have it archived there. Of course, we are also archiving it on the GF Key Network. We have a phenomenal forum, active members on there, always looking to help internet broadcasters and podcasters out. If you go to ibroadcastnetwork.org, you could sign up for the forum, totally free. You can sign up for the website, totally free. We don't charge anything. And we're constantly providing new information and new blogs every week. So check it out and give us your feedback. We're always looking to hear from you guys. Next week, I will announce the guest. I believe it is Chris Tobin. next Friday on the show. I want to thank Mike again for coming on the IAIB Spotlight. Mike, thanks a lot, and I'm going to be talking to you off the air within a couple minutes about some of my problems, as I do every week. As I do every week. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, guys, we'll see you all next week. Take care.